All right, guys, on this episode, I have Joe Fairless, friend, colleague, and real estate master who is the co-founder of Ashcroft Capital, who has close to $2 billion of assets under management. In addition, he is the creator of the best ever real estate advice investing show, the longest ever running real estate daily podcast. He is a Texas Tech alumni advisor and board member. And he has numerous charities, including Junior Achievement, Best Ever Causes. He lives with his wife and daughter in Cincinnati. And this interview, guys, you're going to learn about the value of a mortality clock, how to go from a $30,000 struggling advertising executive to controlling $2 billion of real estate, and the number one book that has influenced the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Joe Fairless. Stay tuned. What if you could reclaim hours of free time each week, create legacy building wealth, and devote more energy to your passion projects without giving up on your career as a life-saving MD? My name is Vikram Raya, functional cardiologist, high performance coach, and real estate expert. And I'm here to give you the tools, strategies, and solutions you need to transform your life so you can unlock your limitless potential and achieve greatness, all the while freeing up your precious time. Welcome to Limitless MD. Let's dive in. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Limitless MD. I'm your host, Vikram Raya, and I have a special guest today, guys. I got Joe Fairless, a good friend of mine who's an uber successful real estate investor, a cool guy, and I want to say maybe a future grandmaster in chess potentially.
You know what? I'm practicing and hiring people to help me get to the top of my game, but I have a feeling I'm not going to reach that level.
From what I've learned about you, it's there's a solution to everything, right?
Well, I mean, grandmaster though. I mean, you got to throw. I think I'd have to forsake my real estate career, and I'm not ready to do that to become a grandmaster.
You're not ready to hang up the multifamily hat yet, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So Joe, I'm just super excited and pumped. I've admired you. We've had some really cool conversations over the years, and we share some common mentors. But let me ask you this: what is a failure or an apparent failure that sort of set you up for later success? What's your favorite failure if you had one?
Well, I don't think I have any favorite failure, but I certainly have a failure that will qualify for what you're asking, because I do believe, as the question is alluding to, that failures, assuming that we process them mentally and approach tactically the right way, are springboards for helping us with future things. And I mean, certainly the main one that comes to mind is the first syndication that I did right out of the gate after having owned 4 single family homes. I actually got a master lease with option to purchase. So technically we didn't purchase it, but I raised money from 12 investors. It lost money, and I ended up paying back my investors out of my own pocket over the course of the next year to 2 years after we closed on the property. So after we sold it, out of my own pocket, and I paid them plus 14% annualized cash on cash return. And that first deal, the first syndication, taught me a whole lot from what I'm good at and what I'm not good at as it relates to commercial real estate investing, and what I need on my team, or who I need on my team, and what I need on my team in order to have success in the apartment syndication industry.
Yeah, let's talk about teams for a second, Joe. A lot of people are starting off, either they're physicians and they want to pivot to something else, or they're already successful entrepreneurs or something, but there's always plateaus to their growth. They grow, they read the books, they go to the conferences, they learn, they implement business practices, but they hit that plateau. What has enabled you to pierce through these plateaus, or don't stay them too long and go and keep the growth up? Like, is it the team? Yeah. Is it your mindset? There's not one thing, but what would you say is the main thing?
mean, I can tell you I relate to that because whenever I graduated college, I went to Texas Tech University and my major was advertising with the English minor. And I went from Texas Tech, which is in Lubbock, Texas, to New York City. And it's a stark contrast in culture and just, just going from a college kid to be, working in New York City. I was working on Wall Street, or excuse me, I was working on Madison Avenue as my first job out of school. And I was making $30,000 as a junior project manager for a company called TBWA Chiat Day. They did all the Apple ads back in the 1980s, and so that was what they're well known for. And when you're not making a lot of money and you're living in New York City, that was a goal of mine naturally to climb the corporate ladder, and I had a quantifiable goal of achieving to earn annually $100,000. And so I climbed the corporate ladder relatively quickly, and to earn $100,000 before I was 30, by the way. And so I ended up earning a $100,000 salary by the time I was around 27, 28 years old or so. And then I was like, okay, but now what? So what's next? And so what I realized with having achieved that quantifiable goal, and that was the first real big goal as a professional that I had achieved, that I'd been striving for. What I realized is that there's something deeper that is needed in order to have true fulfillment. And I know you're a personal development fan, as am I, and student. And, we know about Tony Robbins and the 2 keys to fulfillment: growth and contribution. And I was not a student of personal development then. I was, in my late 20s. But I realized that something was off. And so that's something that I'm constantly mindful of now whenever I do achieve a certain level, and perhaps there's a plateau where it's like, okay, I achieved it, but now I'm kind of just plateauing and not really growing. Well, it's a simple reason why I'm plateauing or not growing as much, and it's because I don't have the drive that I had to get me to that level that I'm at. And so why don't I have what's going on with me? Why don't I have that drive? Hey, I achieved a certain amount, in this case, $100,000 before I was 27, 28. But then I kind of, tapered off. Why is that? Well, because I didn't have I wasn't truly fulfilled by what I was doing. And so what I found is that when I define how I look at where I spend my time based off of the values that are important to me in life, then I tend to have fewer of those plateaus because I'm spending and investing more of my time doing things that I really enjoy doing. And so you don't have as many of those plateaus. That's how you find, from my experience, that's how you find success or fulfillment after success. You find fulfillment after success by being intentional about the values that are important to you or I, and then making decisions on how we spend our time based on those values. So I'll give you a specific example. So I have a vision board, and I've had a vision board for the last 7, 8 years, maybe longer. And on the vision board right now, I'm looking at it. Look, I've got it printed 3 feet by 4 feet on my wall, and it's also on my phone, my backdrop of my phone and backdrop of my desktop computer. On there's a number 1, number 2, and number 3, because I went through this exercise and I identified what are the 3 things I value most that I want to use as a filter in which I decide how I invest my time, because we all have a short amount of time on Earth together. And if you look behind me, I don't know if you can see it. See that clock ticking down?
Yeah, I see the clock.
That's my death clock. And my wife does not like me referring to it as my death clock. So it's countdown to my 90th birthday clock. Okay. But regardless, it serves as a reminder for me daily that, man, time's ticking away. Like every moment is precious. And so the three things that I have of on my vision board that help me identify how I spend my time. One, and these three things can be different for anyone, but these are mine. First is health, second is freedom, and three is enjoyment. And certainly family and friends and everything else is integrated into these things. But those are the three things that whenever I am presented opportunities or presented, different, if there's some ideas that I have that I want to pursue, I first think, okay, do these align with health, freedom, and enjoyment in that order? Because those are the three things that are important to me. And then I have fewer plateaus because I'm spending more of my time doing things that that align with my values.
Yeah, I love that. I love first of all, I love the clock, the countdown clock. That is, some people, hey, that's morbid. No, it's smart. It's like,
It's real.
look, like, it's not about like, I want a million. Good, you got a million. I want 2 million. It's this hedonic treadmill that we're all on, right? That can't be the lens in which you justify your life. I think it's that. And how do you gain that fulfillment? Is because you're in alignment with your values. Your three values you talked about, Joe, are crucial to you filtering everything else out in your life and say, hey, if they're in alignment with my values, that's what I do. If they're not in alignment, I'm going to take a pass. And so then when you're striving for that, you're saying you don't hit those plateaus because I call, like, what Joe Pollock says, easy, lucrative, and fun. You're in flow. You're in state. So that's awesome. But let me ask you this, man. You've created a couple of different platforms, the Best Ever platform, which is like your own personal brand / your sort of publishing house. And then you have Ashcroft. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to do things, but they find it's very difficult to do two things at once. How do you frame those two things, even though they're very complementary?
Well, at this point, I have the right team in place. I have someone who oversees the Best Ever brand, and I spend the majority of my time, I'd say 90% of my time professionally on Ashcroft. Ashcroft, coincidentally, or no coincidence, earns me 99.9% of the income personally compared to the Best Ever brand. The Best Ever brand was not profitable until this year. And so, I think early on, though, it was just prioritizing my time. I mean, we all have the same amount of hours in the day. It's just, it was a priority for me. Now, let's talk about some things I had going in my favor. One of them was that I didn't have any kids at the time whenever I was starting out. Another was that, I've been with my wife for 6 or so years. I should know that exactly. six or seven years.
We'll edit that out later.
Yeah, right. She won't listen to this. But before that, I was single and I wasn't able. I didn't have any priorities or time commitments that I from a family standpoint, other than my immediate family. So there, and I was younger too. I was late 20s, early 30s. Now I'm 39. And so, there's just this different stage of life afforded me the opportunity to prioritize my time and just double down on things. And so now with when people have families and stuff, it's more challenging, or a W-2 job that they're also working on in addition to something else. And one thing that was helpful for me, I'll say, regardless of my life circumstance or someone who's listening's life circumstance, is if we're interested in something, but we still have that full-time commitment, then one thing that was helpful for me is I did what I call sampled life experiences while I had that full-time commitment. So I'll give you a specific example. Whenever I had my full-time job in advertising in New York, and it was a 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. job, Monday through Friday, and a little bit on the weekends, but for the most part, they respected the weekends. But it was a lot of hours working in advertising in New York City. What I did is I wanted to become a better public speaker. So I took some improv classes, and then they said, well, why are you here? I said, I'm trying to become a better public speaker. Like, well, if you really want to become a better public speaker, then you should do stand-up comedy. I was like, what? They said, yeah, because if you do stand-up with improv, if you're on stage and I hand you a broomstick, then the audience is going to know, man, you're seeing that broomstick for the first time. So they're going to cut you some slack in terms of how funny you are with what you say. Whereas with stand-up comedy, the expectations are much higher. So stand-up comedy is like a master's class in public speaking, because you have a higher level of expectations with the audience, because you've got to make them laugh every 7 seconds. And by no means did I make them laugh every 7 seconds, or really any seconds at all during my stand-up bits, but it was quite the personal growth experience. And I was able to do that while I had my full-time job. I was also doing other things like teaching classes on how to invest in real estate while I had my full-time job. I do it on the weekends. And so I think that's a really good way for anyone who's looking outside of their current career to just sample things. And then I saw what I liked, what I didn't like about certain aspects. And clearly I did not become an improv professional or stand-up comedian professional, but I ended up seeing the path in real estate. So that's what I ended up focusing on.
I love that. That's a great piece of advice for those guys listening. The sample career sort of appetizer platter, where you're safe, you're doing your main job, and then trying out different things on the weekends or on your nights, and your off hours. And so I love that, and it ended up leading to your next pivot in career in your life. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, because I asked this to a lot of my guests. What's your superpower, and more importantly, what's the dark side of that superpower?
Well, I'll say it this way. When I'm in a room, I am very in tune with who is disengaged, who's engaged, who is interested in what's being discussed, who's not. I'm talking about, it doesn't even have to be if I'm talking or not to someone. It's just if I'm just observing, if I'm sitting in a chair and just watching all these people talk to each other, I can pick up on that really well. And so that allows me to connect with people more, because I can tell if, hey, what I'm saying is resonating or not, or if if I need to approach something differently. And I can tell you, my oldest brother has the same, we'll call it skill set or superpower as well, where if you were to come over to our house and my brother's there, he would spend the majority of his time speaking to you and making sure that you feel comfortable and just getting to know you. And he'd be really engaging, and you two would just hit it off. And he just wants to make sure everyone is comfortable and engaged. And so the downside to that is that when people are not engaged and you feel like you have I feel like I have I'm compelled to make sure, hey, everyone's feeling comfortable. And if they're in a new setting, doing what I can. And so, it can be a little taxing, for sure. But I certainly am glad that I have that skill set, because, it just helps me connect with people more. And I enjoy that. And I enjoy the one-on-one aspect of just getting to know people.
Here's an easy one for you, Joe. What's the number one book you gift the most?
Number one book I gift the most would be, I'd say, so I don't send books out to people, but as far as recommend, I'd say 48 Laws of Power would be one that I recommend a lot to people. And it's by Robert Greene. He's just a phenomenal writer, very engaging, very tell it like it is. It comes from a historical standpoint, where you learn all about history and then how that history can be applied to what you're working on now.
Yeah, I like that book a lot, and I know you're a big reader. You keep it OG, like original. You read the books, and I know a lot of people are into Audible. You find one better than the other, or you find it easier to take it in as you read?
Yeah. I mark up my books, like this book I'm reading now. I don't know if you see it, but it's got like a torn cover, Reclaiming Conversation, and I just I make notes in the book and stuff. So Yeah, I like to get all up in there and mark it up. I reread Raving Fans this weekend.
Okay.
Because that is something that I personally need to do a better job implementing at my company. So that's something I needed a refresher on.
When you're at Ashcroft or even Best Ever, or just in life, when you feel overwhelmed or you feel unfocused or you've lost your focus or drive even, which I don't think is often for you, but if it does happen, what do
No,
you
it
do?
happens. Yeah,
And
yeah, of course it happens.
what questions do you ask? Or
Um,
how do you refocus, reframe?
well, I mean, I think it depends on the situation for what's happening. If it's, uh, but generally speaking, the challenges that come up, the the question is what's great about this and how can I use this? I mean, like I just mentioned that I reread Raving Fans this weekend, marked it up again, and going to implement some things from that book into our systems at Ashcroft. And um, I'm confident that because we're going through a challenging part right now from a investor services standpoint. I mean, our deals are doing very well, but we just don't have the right number of people on our team from an investor services standpoint to deliver 5-star service, and I'm fixing that right now. Um, I'm confident that because we're going through these growing pains now over these 2 months or so, that we'll go two years ahead of where we were if we hadn't gone through these growing pains. And so I'm always, yeah, I've got another post. I've got a poster right over here. You can't see it, but it says, "We don't grow when things are easy. We grow when we face challenges." And so, that's just how I approach it. What's great about this? And then I know that I'm going to be better off as a result of it.
As you keep, going toward your goals and dreams, what's next for Joe? Like where it and I guess a corollary to that would be, how do you stay monomanically focused on your one thing? While I've seen a lot of people in our industry start varying and diverging and
Yeah.
mixing and matching, like talk about like sort of what's next and how do you stay so focused on one thing and go for that complete domination ownership?
Yeah. I mean, I went to for March Madness basketball tournament. My wife and I, and we went with some friends. We went to Las Vegas and bet on some games and just went to a Katy Perry concert, which was quite the production, and did some other things. And it was a lot of fun. One of the things we did is we went to an Italian restaurant in the Wynn, and it was surprising to me that in addition to Italian food, they offered all sorts of other food, from Chinese to American and to other things. I was like, man, this is just too much. You're not focused, and quite frankly, the Italian food wasn't that good, and it wasn't a surprise because they weren't laser focused on the thing they did very well. And so, yeah, same thing with our business. I mean, we're focused on multifamily value-add investments. That's where we do well, and it's possible to incorporate other things, but I've seen it from a restaurant standpoint. Whenever I go there, if a menu is 7 pages long, usually they're not good at any of it. But if it's 1 page long or half a page, they're gonna be darn good at those things. And I think that's ultimately what we want to be, and that's who we are. So that's just our mindset.
And the goal is to continue to grow, just go
Yeah.
deeper and just and
I mean, yeah, I mean, we work as you do, with high net worth accredited investors, and so the goal is to continue to help them out, because ultimately my focus is on helping. Well, I have an inherent belief that we're all good people. Most of us are good people, and when we can do what we want with our time, we will do more good things for others and for our family and for ourselves. And so if we at Ashcroft can help our accredited investors do more with or earn more of their time back through our investments, then the world's going to be better. That's my underlying belief. And so, yes, long-term vision, it's to keep performing on our deals and keep working with accredited investors.
I have a lot of doctors and other entrepreneurs who are concerned about the changing of the wind.
Mhm.
What advice do you have for them so they can be able to navigate any uncertainty that may come in the future?
Well, I mean, I'd say, yeah, inflation, depending on what report you look at, was anywhere between 7 to 14%. Well, 14% according to one report last month. And if I'll speak for myself, if I put $100,000 of my money in a savings account and it's earning 3%, which it's not at a savings account, but let's just say it is, and inflation was 14%, then I'm down 11% buying power from that $100,000. So, in my opinion, personally, it's not a matter of not investing, because with the inflation the way it is, I feel personally that I need to invest, but it's a matter of what do I invest in, and I've invested in all sorts of things, from startups in Cincinnati, startups in Dallas, venture capital firms, some other thing that was probably a Ponzi scheme, and I lost $100,000, and ultimately all roads lead back to multifamily. In my opinion, I mean, I personally am an LP in about 100 deals as of this conversation, and 25 to 30 of those are current deals, my current deals, but still I'm an LP in about 70 to 75 other people's deals, because I believe in it. And so I do personally spread it out as an LP across other asset classes, but I'd say 80% of my money is in multifamily. So it's stabilized cash flowing assets, and certainly things can go wrong. You can just reference my first story about how I messed up, and there are all sorts of things that it was my responsibility to see the deal through successfully, and it was not successful, but I learned from it, brought in the right team members. So things can go wrong. You could lose your money in any investment, but I think ultimately it's if you have a tangible asset that cash flows out of the gate, and you have a proven business plan that you can scale back should the winds change, and just sit back and cash flow, but not make as much as you'd like on the exit, but still be relatively safe, then that's what I personally choose to do. I can't recommend that to anyone else. That's my philosophy.
Guys, you just heard it from Joe. I mean, the guy's humble, down to earth, successful, but he's still a thinker, and he reads voraciously, and he's a family man. I consider him a good friend. So, guys, this is definitely an episode you might want to listen to again. Joe, what's the impact you want to have on the world?
Well, on my grave, I want to say simply that those who came across me were better off as a result of coming across me. And maybe we'll word it a little bit better, but that's ultimately what I
You'll
want.
get your copyright on it.
That's ultimately what I don't want to copyright that. So yeah, a copywriter. Yeah. Get a copywriter on it. I mean, that's it. I mean, simple as that. I mean, I personally volunteer for hospice, and I do that twice a month. Now that we can with COVID again, but ultimately that's it. And it's so eye opening. I know we got to roll, but it's so eye opening. And I mean, I know you and your physician colleagues know this much better than me. So I recognize who I'm speaking to, but it's eye opening to hear from people who are knocking on death's door, which we all could be, we just don't know it, but knocking on death's door and talking to them and hearing about what's important to them: family, memories with loved ones, travel experiences, pets. I mean, just the magical moments with the people who they love. I mean, that's perspective, and that right there will keep you focused on what's most important.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Much love, brother. Thank you so much for being on the show. And where can people find out about Ashcroft? Where can they find out about you? And how can they connect?
You can email me directly, joe@ashcroftcapital.com, or you can go to our website, ashcroftcapital.com. And we actually have a section that we're launching. It's launched. Okay, so I'll tell you, hearfrominvestors.com. So if you go to hear, HEAR from FROM investors, you know how to spell that, .com, hearfrominvestors.com. You can listen to and watch over 100 testimonials from our investors, so you can learn more about their experiences.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much. And with that, guys, we'll wrap up, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Continue to be phenomenal, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Limitless MD. If you found value from this episode, I encourage you to share this episode with a friend and let me know by leaving a review. For more information, make sure you check out the links in the show notes below or simply visit vikramraya.com. So until next time, my friends, be phenomenal.